Welcome back to the Low Stick Podcast. I'm Jason Retz with my co-host
Eric Detman.
And we are back for our once a month monthly show that does all kinds of different things. Now, you might be thinking, the state meets just ended. We just had NXR, and we're going to be talking about those. No, we're not done yet. Mr. Detman has qualified his ladies team to NXN, so congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And we're going to kind of leave it there, and we will talk about some of those things after, but we don't want to curse anything or do anything crazy, so we'll let you just sit on that for a while. What we want to talk about this month is we want to talk about clinic season, which most of you have concluded your season. So we want to talk about maybe what's out there for you, what you should get out of it, what we've taken, what we've left on the table, some of the things that you have the ability to grow as a coach and help your program to do a little bit of everything, train better culture, whatever that might be. So with that being said, Eric, what do you do as you wrap up now, keep in mind, he's not done yet, right? But what do you normally do as you kind of wrap up your season and you start to get into clinic season? What are you thinking about for your program?
A big part of what I'm thinking is what went well, which is great, but an even bigger part is, what didn't go so well and what do we need to work on? And I can already think of some things specifically within our program. We found a lot of success, but there's things that we didn't succeed as well at, or things that we wanted to accomplish that we didn't. And I'm already kind of thinking about that and talking to my assistants and talking to some of the kids who are coming back of like, why do we think this worked? Why do we think maybe this didn't work? And what can we do a little bit better? My favorite question to ask the kids is what do you need from me, or what did we not give you this year that you needed in order to get better? So that's kind of what I'm working on and what I'm thinking about outside of all of the other head coaching things, like, categorizing uniforms and tying up.
Terrible.
Yeah. The best part of our job. I'm sure we all love that so much.
So as you can see, you're already developing as a coach an outline of what you're kind of look for or what you're trying to perfect. So I think the first thing you need to do, and we may talk about this next month as well, but kind of just reflect on the basis of what you're trying to improve. From there, you're kind of scouting the country per se to what you could potentially go listen to, or who you could go listen to. Now, if you are new into coaching, most states have their own association clinic almost every year. Some of them have already taken place. I know that Michigan had theirs last weekend. I think it's a great idea. They do it the week after their state meet. They honor their all-state athletes, their coaches of the year. They do it right away in a good wrap-up. Now, I like that because it throws everything together, but at the same time, it doesn't give a coach much time to reflect on what they have to do. They've got to sit and listen to speakers like John O'Malley, which is unfortunate. I can say that with a hard laughter here, but no, seriously, it gives you a little bit of time, and we'll talk a little bit last time, but you kind of need your own headspace before you start going to clinics. So you've kind of got an outline of what you're looking for. Where do you start when you're going to clinics, or who you're picking to talk to? Where do you start normally?
Yeah, I think a big thing is, like, when I go to clinics, and I've been to a number of them, I've spoken at a few, which has been really awesome, but I try to look at the lineups and try to get a pretty good idea of who each of these people are and what I think they present and what I think they can bring to the table. And try to hone in on a couple of different things, whether it's looking up on Twitter, looking up, on Google, or whatever it might be. And getting an idea of, like, what did they bring to the table and what do I want to learn from them? So when I went to Jay's clinic last year, and gosh, I feel so bad now. The Beaver Creek coach, whose name is escaping me at the moment, who does an amazing job, Howard something. I love the energy that he brings, and I love, his idea of bringing this fun to practice on a consistent basis. And that was something I wanted to learn about. We do a good job of that, I think, but we can always get better. And I wanted to, Howard Russ, and I wanted to dive in and really figure out, like, how do you do this? And how do you change it up so it doesn't become monotonous? How do you change it up so it doesn't become just like the same thing every day for the kids. So I'm really trying to think about like, what do we need to work on, and how can I learn from these people? And I'll take notes. Like as soon as the season ends, I start a Google Doc with myself and say, what could we have done better? And I have a list of questions, and I want to find answers to those questions. And I think clinics are a really good way to go about that. So what about you in terms of, you guys just finished as well, and had a really successful year. What are you looking at from a clinic season? What are you trying to learn?
So I do very similar as you. I look and I try to figure out what we need or how we can be better at what we've done. One of the things I think myself in particular, I'm really outside the box thinker, and so I like to
You sure
hear.
are.
Yeah, I
Well,
like
that's
to.
one thing, not to cut you off. That's one thing I appreciate about you. And some of our back and forth conversations have been really helpful because you have forced or changed my thought process on a lot of things, because you are like, I think we get stuck in this idea. And again, I apologize for cutting you off, but I think it's really important for our
Yeah.
listeners to hear is like, we get stuck in this idea of like, we're just going to keep doing all of these things time and time again. If we go back to, I don't remember if it was our last podcast or the one before, but we're talking a little bit about summer camps, and you're talking about these different scenarios that you put your kids in, whether it's this kidnapping thing, or whether it's bringing in a local firefighter or a Green Beret or whatever it might be. Like, I don't know that a lot of us think that way, but a lot of us should. And I think listening to people like you with an open mind is really beneficial. So keep going.
So I think one of the reasons why I think outside the box is because I want my kids to run as fast as your kids, and I want our kids to run faster than your kids, right? And I have this saying, and some people take it the wrong way, but I want to be the best coach on earth. And the reason
Yeah,
I want to be the best coach on earth is because my student athletes deserve that,
right.
right? Like, I don't want to be the best one for me. I want to do it because they deserve that. If they're putting in the time, they should literally have the best person that knows the most amount of stuff, which I don't.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to seek that out. So when I listen to people, I look for things that are a little unconventional. I want to listen to people who have 1,000 kids on their team and see what they do. I want to listen to people who train at altitude. I want to listen to people that are completely different scenario than what I'm training or the environment I'm in, because I need those outside the box ideas. I don't want to necessarily hear what the team right down the road from us is doing, because I know the variety in which they do is very similar to what we're doing. I don't want those things. I want the
Right.
latest greatest, right? I'm not the one hit wonder kind of thing, but I want to see what other people are doing to find success across the country. So when I'm looking for those types of things, I'm really looking for outside the box ideas on what they do. I'll use John Sipple as an example. They only train on the road and the track. Like, they don't get on soft surfaces. Like, how the heck does he do that and stay healthy? I need to figure out the other things he's doing other than running in order to get my kids to perform at a high level also. It's not the
Absolutely.
workouts they're doing, it's what they're doing on top of their running.
Right.
And I think for some of us, that's one of the most important things. All right. So, Eric, you're sitting and you're listening to Scott Christensen. How much of what he's saying are you taking out, and how much are you just processing?
Yeah, it's funny. My assistant, Marie Markham, she made fun of me the first time I ever went to Jay Johnson's clinic. And for our listeners, you guys will hear us reference that clinic a number of times, probably on this podcast. And I think we would probably both agree maybe it's the best one that you can go to in the country, just in terms of the amount of people that show up, the range of, where they come from within the country, range of ability, range of like newness versus people have been doing this for a long time.
It's literally a
Um,
melting pot of coaches.
Yeah, which is really special. But Marie used to make fun of me because I just had this. I took like one of the little kind of notepads that you get when you check into a hotel, and I had one pen and I just filled out one sheet. And she was like, we listened to people talk for the last 2 days for like 8 hours a day, and you have one little notepad of notes. Like, did you get anything out of that? And I'm like, I can't tell you how much I got out of that. But for me, and I think we'll dive into this a little bit more, it's not so much about like the workouts. I'm never going to be Scott Christensen. That dude's a genius. And sorry, Scott, I didn't mean to call you dude. But the way that he's able to mesh specific workouts within a certain periodization of training within this part of the year, like, I'll never be that person. but the way that he potentially communicates about a workout, I can do. And that's what I want to pick up. So if I'm listening to Scott, it's not that it's 12 by 400 with a minute rest and we're doing it in, 6 weeks before our marquee race, but it's how are you describing the benefit of that workout to your athletes to get them to understand and believe in why you're doing that specific workout. So for me, it's more of the why or the how of these things versus the actual workout itself. And that's where I'm going to take notes. And, O'Malley, you used him as a reference earlier. I can't remember if it was the first year or the second year at Jay's clinic, but he talked about a tree, and you have those branches on a tree that are easily breakable. And those are like your freshmen. And those are the ones you need to take the most care of, because if you don't, if somebody jumps up on that branch, it automatically breaks, just like your freshman will. And that could be, a kid getting hurt. That could be a kid quitting. Whereas you look at a more mature tree and you hang on that branch, and you could have 3, 4, 5 people hanging on it, but it doesn't break because it's strong enough and it has the ability to withhold the force and the things that you're asking of that tree, similar to like our seniors. That was an amazing analogy, which I use and have used time and time again. So that's really what I'm trying to pull. And I think those things are, or for, at least for me and for our program, and everyone's a little different, but that's the most value that I can pull to help our kids to be successful. So
yeah, and it's not necessarily what they say; it's how they say it. And I think the more or the longer you coach, or the more you're around coaches, when they're describing something, you kind of put yourself in a practice scenario, and you feel yourself there as they describe what they're doing and how things are developing within their program on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Yeah. And I think, a way that so there's two things I always say. One is like, if I'm not constantly trying to get better, I'm doing a disservice to my kids, similar to like what you said earlier. And I think clinics are a great opportunity for that. But what I would say is your, 5 by 1200 is not that much different than my 4 by mile.
Yep.
But there are components to us doing that potentially are quite different. The explanation, the outcome, the reasoning, the buy-in from our kids. Like, I think those are the things that if we put some more attention into that, like we'll find a little bit more success.
The first year I went to Boulder Running Clinics, I sat across the room from Dan Iverson, and unintentionally, as I listened to a speaker, I would look to see when he was writing things down, just kind of out of the corner of my eye. And I thought to myself, all right, so if something that was just said is going off into his brain, what can I take out of what was just said and write that down? And what I found myself doing is not writing any workouts at all. I was writing everything else down. I was writing the preparation to it. Like you mentioned, all right, how are you describing the workout before we start? Are we circling up? Am I one-on-one with the girls or the kids before I start the workout? How and what is happening during the day in order for that stuff to happen?
Mm-hmm.
I will say, if you go to a clinic with a lot of younger coaches, every single time something comes up with a workout, they're actively jotting down what potentially the workout is, which is a great way to start, right? But once you have that foundation, it's the everything else. All right. So you're picking out what clinic you're going to. Now, this is why Boulder becomes so important in my opinion. I used to have let's back up. Almost every weekend, I used to go sit on someone's couch, and I used to pick their brain on what they did. I used to ask questions. I take notes. I did all this stuff almost every weekend in the off season. So to make my wife happy, I used to do a distance summit where I brought everybody to my house, and I had 40 coaches sit down in my garage or in my living room if it was too hot with the air conditioning. And we used to just talk about anything. And I used to be the person who would just question everyone. My only rule was you can't come sit and listen. You have to come sit and participate, because I don't want this to be a lecture on training. I want this to be a roundtable on what to help each other and get better. One of the things I love about Jay's clinic is that the best parts of the clinic aren't necessarily the clinic. Some of
Right.
the best parts of the clinic are discussing what happened during the clinic, or going to dinner with a group of coaches that were there, or sitting around asking questions. I've never seen Dr. Messer have more people huddled around him than the first year I was at the clinic. I mean, it was just like throwing shots at him, trying to ask everybody ask questions, and you just sit and listen, right? And he'll give his great answers for 3 or 4 minutes. And then somebody asks another question. That conversation and that rolling of what you're trying to develop was probably the best part of the clinic.
Totally agree. Yeah. I think, and it's funny because when you and I started chatting about what we wanted this month's podcast to be about, that was probably the biggest thing that I wanted to try to make sure that we focused on at some point was like the clinics are great, and they are by all means. Like, listen, take notes, take in what these people are saying, and you have this amazing opportunity to listen to some of the best people in the country. But when you're able to have a drink with them, sit down to dinner with them, you get them a little bit one-on-one or 5-on-1 or whatever that might be, like there's just something different that comes out of that. And I think back to, talking to Shannon Thompson, who works with, Northern Arizona and all these professional athletes. She's worked with some of the
He works
local
with
athletes here in
everybody
Portland.
now.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
she's incredible.
Yeah.
When myself and like 2 or 3 other people got to talk with her for almost an hour at just one of the socials at Jay's clinic, I blew my mind. I remember saying to her, like, I know that obviously the coaches at Northern Arizona get a lot of credit, but I think your fingerprints are all over this program. And she was super modest. That was great. But like just listening to her, it was just incredible. And some of the things that she was talking about, right? Like when she was talking about the place that we feel our nerves, so in our fingers, in our head, in our stomach, wherever that might be, is the same place that we feel excitement. And she talked about how like she's going through those things with her athletes at Northern Arizona. And as she's going through this, and this is like in a side session, I'm just like in my head, like trying to process all this, like make sure you remember this, make sure, because I'm not going to pull my phone out and start taking notes.
Right.
But it was mind blowing, right? And that didn't happen during the clinic, but it happened because of the clinic.
Yeah.
So that's part one. Part two is, for people who are new to clinics or people who are new to this environment, new coaches, whatever, approach people.
Yep.
Like as somebody who's spoken at clinics, as somebody who is brand new at clinics, and as somebody who's spoken, I love when somebody comes up and talks to me. Partially, because like in a weird way, it feeds my ego. Like, okay, yeah, that's great. I was super concerned that they weren't going to take anything out of this, but clearly you did, and you want to know more. And that makes me feel good. And I, I'm not going to speak on behalf of all clinicians, but I'm going to anyways. Like, I think they probably feel that way too. Like, It's cool that you want to hear more about what they're saying. And then as that person who is new, because I am new to the clinic world, some of the best conversations I've had are just going up and saying like, hey, I would just love to ask you a question about this. And I've never been met with somebody who's like, no, or laughing at the question I'm asking. Like they genuinely want to help. So I encourage you, like, please. And when I talk to clinics, that's like one of my last slides is go up, talk to people, ask questions. It's the best way you're going to learn.
Yeah. And honestly, being in that position before, I feel like if people aren't asking me questions, I did a disservice to the people that taught me the stuff that I'm also sharing, because none of the stuff that people are putting out, very little of what people are putting out in clinics is original ideas. Most of the things that are going out, they've learned from someone else. And I feel like I need to do a service to those people and display knowledge of what they've taught me to help someone else out. And when they ask questions, you just feel like you've done some justice to the people that have helped you out along the way.
Totally. And, I remember a line that Mr. Kern, when I was in high school, used to use all the time about like, this artist steals from this artist and this artist. Like the artists that we see today, they didn't just come up with all this stuff on their own. They've learned from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years how to do certain techniques or how to make beautiful art. Coaches are the same way. Like we've found a lot of success at Lincoln High School. I am by no means am I going to say that like I came up with all this on my own. It's conversations with people like you and Chris Johnson and Scott Christensen and Timo, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And I think if you can really create that nest of humans that you can fall back on, it's pretty special. And clinics are good places to do that.
So that kind of leads us to our next point. We talked about it just a little bit, but when you do go to a clinic and you listen to some amazing coaches, how do you test run some of the things that you've learned? So let's say, for example, maybe you're going to take a sequence of workouts, right? Maybe it's not necessarily you're going to run, 12 by 400, but you're going to sequence some workouts together based on some of the stuff that you've learned. I use simple as example, every day's on a hard surface, right? So they're transitioning with some of their strength stuff that they're doing after practice. How do you decide the pieces that you're going to take, and how do you know if it's working or if you screwed it up and you need to just take the context of what they're doing instead of exactly what's going on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would love for you to answer it too, because I know that you have a certain way that you go through these things. But for me, the first thing I do is I look at myself internally and I say, like, can we do that? Like, does that make sense for us? So I listened to Kelly Christensen, and he's amazing. And Niwot is fantastic. What is that? What does Niwot have that I don't have? So I'm like John Sipple, right? I am a city school that's surrounded by roads, and I don't have access to hundreds of miles of dirt trails. I'm not at, X elevation and whatever. So I can't mimic what they're doing. But what I can do is take what they've done and help it to fit my model of what I think works for us. And I can take, this type of progression run that they'll do on a dirt road. Maybe it's different, but I can do it on a track. I can find it a way that it'll fit within what we're trying to accomplish. So I think that that's the thing that you have to look at is, I really like this. How can I make it mine? Rather than I'm just going to take exactly what he said and I'm going to put that into my training block. Because I think that's where a lot of new coaches really find some struggles and some issues, is they're like, oh my God, this is so great. This person's found all the success. I'm going to do exactly what they did. And because I'm doing exactly what they did, we're going to find the same level of success. But what you don't know is all the other stuff that they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't know how Kelly's, similar to what I was talking about earlier, we don't know how he's describing the workout to the kids. That's equally as important as the workout itself. We don't know the ancillary stuff that they're doing afterwards. We don't know what the mileage was, the week of that workout, or the workout was on Monday versus the Thursday. Like, we have a very small sample size of what that is, that I think we need to take that a little bit with a grain of salt, like the idea of it, but how can we fit that into what we're doing? So, but like I said, I want to hear you, because I know that you have a pretty specific way you go about it as well.
So when I would listen to somebody, and I'll just use Scott because we're using him off the top, let's say we're running our 400s. What I've done before is I've pulled that workout, tried to plug it in, and it just flops straight on his face.
Yeah.
I've got to figure out, when he runs that workout, what he's trying to accomplish. Where is it in their season? Kind of like you mentioned, there's so many moving parts that go with it. Did we run a long run on Monday? Did we have a hard race the week before? There are so many moving parts. So I think contextually, when you take someone's stuff, which is perfectly okay to do, you've got to figure out how it fits within their schedule to find where it's going to fit for your schedule. And
Right.
that's the art of this coaching thing, instead of necessarily the X's and O's, right? Those are important, but you got to know how to paint that brush across the canvas of the season. When I started coaching, I used to have the first day and the last day, everything planned out to a T. We weren't changing it. I knew this formula was going to work. That doesn't happen anymore. From day to day, we make adjustments based on the weather, based on how they're feeling, based on what we need to do for racing, right? That's the art of the coaching, and not necessarily pulling that specific workout, but pulling that workout, opening it up, looking at everything around it, and then putting it where it needs to be within your program.
Right.
If I took one workout from every team that places at NXN this year, my team is going to do really terrible next year.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to work.
Right.
Everybody does what they do where they do it for a reason. You've got roads and track, but you also have hills. I don't have that. That's just not an option, right? So there are some things that you need to say, all right, so if they're doing hills today, that means that maybe around this time I need to focus on strength, right? Maybe we're going to run a little harder. Maybe we're going to do X, Y, and Z instead. Maybe we're going to get in the weight room and be a little heavier in the weight room before we go on our run, whatever that looks like. I can't just pull what 12 by 400 and plug it in and expect it to work. Just not going to happen.
Totally agree. Yeah. And I think that, similar to what I said, like, that's the mistake that a lot of, potential new coaches, you get excited, you hear the stuff, this person's talking, but it's not about what is this coach doing, and how, and I'm just going to put that in my program, but it's figuring out like what makes the most sense for our program that this person might be talking about.
It's why does it work in their program? It's not how does it work, it's why does it work in their program. And I think that's really important. We've shared some workouts and we've shared some things, and I've been lucky enough, a few people have reached out and asked questions about a few of those things. And it's awesome because you can kind of help them mold it and see it, especially if they're new to it as well, on what they need to do.
Right.
All right. So let's say we're through clinic season. We got a great base, but we haven't gotten everything that we wanted. What are some of the things you do as you reflect back, maybe with your athletes or with your coaches, as you kind of get to the end of clinic season? You know, we're going to wrap up in January for the middle of January as we go out to Boulder for this year, which I highly recommend most of you do. And if you haven't got the email from Jay, their tickets are selling hot, right? So get after it. After this episode, it'll probably sell out, is my guess, with the thousands of people that listen here. Okay. But I would get out there. If you've never been to a clinic before, for you may think, travel may not be worth it. I'm telling you, it's going to be worth it. You go one time and you'll want to go back every single year with what you learn in the environment in which the clinic is held.
Well, you and I wouldn't know each other if it wasn't for Jay's clinic.
Yeah, that's true.
When I think back to the first time I went, and, you know, I knew who some of you were, but I knew like who some of you were as a high school kid, not as the coach I am today. I'm so thankful for that clinic. I think about the relationships I've made, and, you know, people I didn't know existed on this planet 3 years ago. I shared a house with, you know, an Airbnb last year at the clinic because of the relationships that you've built. And it's so special. I mean, the amount of people, like you just said, we won NXR and that was super exciting. The amount of people who reached out to me who I didn't know existed 2 years ago because of clinic season is it's pretty special.
Yeah. I think, if I remember right, we had Illinois coaches at that clinic, and our people from Illinois together. And I think we were kind of standing by each other, but I think for the short amount of time, it was, hey, it's the guy from the long green line in this picture with me.
Yeah, you guys let me go into the photo, which was, I was so thankful. Honorary Illinoisan again.
Yeah, Vandersteen was not real happy. No, I'm just kidding. But no, you're exactly right. You're going to develop relationships. So that's kind of where we lead this next part. You finish your clinics. Hopefully you've made some connections. If you don't get your questions answered, go ask somebody. Right? It's very rare that you reach out to a coach and they won't help you out, right? We might feel like this is a big world of distance running, but it's such a small niche world that literally the best coaches on the planet are going to help you out here, because the passion, if you show passion towards what you're doing, anybody's going to help you. I've yet to reach out to someone and they don't either contact you back or reach out and answer your questions. It's very rare.
I mean, I'm going to throw out two names that are, you know, some people might say controversial, but it's clear they're good at what they do. Like Bill Harris probably coached the greatest girls high school team of all time, and Sean Brosnan, you know, I want to think it's a York team, but it's not, but coached the greatest boys team of all time. I've reached out to both of those people on individual occasions via phone and email with some very specific questions, and both of them emailed me back within, like, honestly, probably 6 or 7 hours with an incredibly thorough response. And the reason I use those two is because they're good and they've been really good. And they've coached some high level athletes. And, you know, this guy who reached out, they had plenty of time for. To your point, like, people want to help people, and especially in the cross country world, I think it's really special.
Yeah, we're such a unique group of individuals. I think when you share, when you suffer together in a way, even though you may not have stepped to the line together, when you have that shared respect of what you're trying to accomplish as a coach, and most of us were former athletes or runners, not all of us, but a lot of us were former athletes and runners. There's a shared respect there for what you're trying to accomplish, which is awesome.
Right. Totally.
All right. So we've gone to the clinics. We've figured out what the heck we are trying to accomplish. We get accomplished. Day one of practice starts. How much or what in our brain should we just throw everything in there, or what does it look like for you? Do you trial and error things? Do you run things by your kids? What do you do?
I think there's a little bit of both. I would actually say I run things by other coaches, and not even necessarily my coaches. I'll run them through my coaches, but like I might call someone like you and be like, hey, I'm thinking about this. What are you thinking? Or like, you and I were at the same clinic and we heard this guy say this. Are we on the same page with what he said or how he described it? So I think I'm cautious, especially with workouts. I'm cautious to start, but I'm interested. And sometimes I will bring things back from the kids and be like, hey, I heard this or I learned this. What do you think? I think it might be fun to try. And they'll be like, yeah, that sounds really fun. Or like, that sounds kind of silly. I don't think we want to do that. And honestly, a lot of times my kids are the deciding factor, because if they feel that way, it ain't going to work.
Right.
So like, let's let them be a part of that decision-making process. It's helpful because it gives them ownership of what they're doing, but it also gives us an answer of whether they want to do it or not.
Right. Doesn't sound crazy. Does double
Right.
threshold sound crazy? Right.
Right.
It sounds crazy to them, then it's out, right?
Right.
Whatever it looks like.
Right.
Which I'm just waiting for those questions to pop up. I know.
Oh, I'm sure they're coming. Up. Yeah, I'm sure they're coming. But what about you? I mean, you've hosted clinics. Obviously, you've been to more clinics than me. What's your thought process around that? I'm sure that you've had so much information that's been thrown at you over the years. What does that look like for you?
I honestly, it is very similar to you in that regard, where I'm going to take little pieces and make some adjustments here or there. And if I have an adjustment that's different to the kids, we're not only going to run it by them, but we're going to thoroughly explain why the heck we are doing this or why we are not doing this now. I think of things that we've cycled in and out, and like, hey, we did this before, why aren't we doing this? Well, we're not doing this now because we're going to do this instead. I think that this is more time effective, or whatever it might be. We're going to do this for our warm up, but we're not going to do this, or the reasons we're doing this. I try to be as descriptive as to the old kids as possible, so they understand what we're formulating. We're not jumping from lily pad to lily pad. We're improving what we're doing, right? We're not taking the latest, greatest thing and putting it in. We've taken a lot of time to decide why we're doing what we're doing, and this is a better solution to the problem than what we had before.
Right.
And I think if you can portray it to your kids that way, and you believe that, and that is the truth, you're going to improve your program. Now, if you're just looking to throw everything to the side and start fresh, that's going to be really difficult for your kids to buy into. There has to be some cohesiveness to what you've done before, unless you were really screwing it up. If you were really screwing it up, then you go, all right, here's the new plan. Let's do this.
Right. Well, and I think too, like, to build a level of trust with your kids, asking their opinion is great, because it gives them a little bit of ownership, but also like, if your kids just sense like, oh, he's going to the clinic and just like throwing out everything he learned at us, like, I don't know if it's necessarily going to build that level of trust of like, what were we not doing before? Or what are we doing now that we weren't doing before that wasn't working? And I think that like there could be a sense of wonderment of like, why aren't we doing that? Or why weren't we doing that? Or why are we doing this now where what we're doing before not working? And it just doesn't. Yeah.
You said that was the best thing. Now this is the best thing.
Exactly.
What's going to be the best thing next year? Yeah. You've got to really be on top of it.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right. Yeah, so you've got it implemented. You should be ready to roll. All right. We'll see you guys later. All right. But seriously, do you have anything to add to clinics there last minute? I mean, I think that's a great foundation. Go in with an open mind. Don't look at a school that's got 1,000 kids and you got 200 kids in your school and go, oh, we can't do what those people are doing. You need to listen to how they're accomplishing what they're doing and really think outside the box. That really turns me off on coaches when they complain about they've got so many kids. That's why they're good. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. You've got to pull something positive out of there. It doesn't matter how many kids they got on our team.
Well, and they have 1,000 kids on their team. It's not because they just have 1,000 kids on their team. It's because they're doing something that 1,000 kids want to be a part of.
Yes. Yes.
That's a big part of it, is like, certainly enrollment happens, but if you look at the percentage of kids on their team versus enrollment, it might be exactly the same as your school with 200 or your school of 200, you have 5 kids that come out versus a school of 2,000 that has 200 kids. Like, well, they're getting more percentage of the kids coming out. Like they're doing something right. So you can certainly still learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%.
But also like one thing that I think is important, for some people, because like it is hard. It's financially, it's challenging to get to some of those places. Talk to your school, like talk to your administration. Some schools will offer PD money. Some schools will chip in. I know of a lot of coaches who like, they don't pay for anything when they go to clinics, hotel, food. the clinic itself, because they're talking to administration, and those individuals at the school are willing or able or whatever to step up and help pay. So that's certainly a route that I would encourage, that we haven't necessarily talked about, but I think it's important for people to know that that's an option.
Yeah, especially beginning coaches. Ask your school. Maybe they just pay for the clinic. Who knows what they pay for? In my instance, they'll pay for the miles to get to the airport. They don't pay for the flight, but they'll pay for those miles back and forth and a few other things as well. So it does make it a little more cost effective to pull off things like that.
Absolutely.
All right. So next time we get together, we'll have completely concluded our seasons. We probably give you a little bit of a wrap up there. We are hoping that whatever is meant to be is meant to be, but we're cheering for some success. We both have a number of friends who will be out there competing for some Greek goddesses of victory out there, which will be exciting, right?
That would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So hopefully, and to this point, it's been successful for both of us regardless. So we'll have some positive things to talk about. We may reflect just a little bit, talk about how our seasons went, maybe some of the changes we'd make, but we're also going to talk moving forward into winter training and to what the beginning of your track season is going to look like. For some of us, it fires up in January. Some people are going to wait a little bit longer. So we want to talk about that just a little bit before you hit Christmas break and spend time by yourself and with your family. We'll let you get excited about the upcoming track season just a little bit.
Absolutely. Can't wait for that.
So share, subscribe, do all those things, reach out. I encourage you to reach out to other coaches, go to a clinic. If you need more information about Boulder, we'll try to share as much of that information as you can. We're not getting any pay this time from Jay or any of that stuff. We just support what he's doing out there. And Wildwood's going to be talking, which will be a great opportunity. I mean, just some fantastic speakers. And I think he's going to do a little bit different of format, which I'm excited to listen to and see what it looks like. But it'll be a great time. If anything, come on out and share some drinks with us and have some dinner and ask some questions. And we'll probably do the same along the way. Maybe sing a little karaoke.
Let's go.
All right. So good luck in the next couple of weeks. We'll be cheering for you. Stay healthy. You specifically. I don't know if you're going to shave, whatever you're going to do, but we support it.
Thank you. Going to keep the mustache.
All right. Till next time, we will see you soon.
Take it easy. Thanks, everybody.